Hello, my name is Carla Wood, and I'm going to give a short PD today on the reading-based strategy of literature circles so that you may use them either in your classroom or if you're a librarian, you may use them in your library classes. First, what is literature circles? Literature circles are groups formed by book choice, not just a teacher-assigned group by ability. Literature circles are structured for student independence, responsibility, and ownership. Literature circles are not unstructured, uncontrolled talk time without accountability. Not knowing much about it, it may seem like that. Yeah, I'm going to give these kids a book, I'm going to tell them to talk about it, and I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. But it's not. It is structured. It does encourage student independence, but they have responsibility that they have to take, and they will need ownership of what they're learning. Literature circles are guided primarily by student insights and questions. So they are student-led. It is not teacher-led or based solely on curriculum-based questions. The students are going to read the text. They're going to form questions. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to have discussions about the questions that they all have. Literature circles are intended as a context in which to apply the reading and writing skills. It's not meant as skills work. It's where they take the skills they've learned and they can apply it into this text. Also, literature circles should be flexible and fluid and not look the same. There is no tried and true recipe. It can be changed based on how the teacher wants it to be. You may have it different based on class sizes. It may look different based on the books you're using. If you're doing poetry, if you're doing a short story, if you're doing a novel, it's always going to look different. There's no specific cookie cutter recipe for this. So why should teachers and librarians use literature circles? There are lots of reasons to use literature circles. Studies have shown that when implemented, using this structure in the classroom has a positive impact on the students' attitudes toward reading and their reading abilities. It's going to increase their public speaking skills. It's going to provide them leadership and teamwork. They all will have a role in which they have to be a leader. They're going to have to work as a group. So it's going to teach them teamwork, how to listen to each other, agree to disagree, listen to each other's opinions, provide a reasoning for the way you feel the way you do, and have good discussion. It's going to teach them active listening. You can't talk the whole time. Everybody has a job. You're going to have to listen to your teammates in order to be able to give conversation with them and have some feedback, answer their questions, tell them how you feel about it. Literature circles help to get kids involved in meaningful discussion about a book. It's not just read and answer a question. They get to actually discuss it, and it's going to be meaningful to them since they are leading it. It's going to help expand students' knowledge of events, feelings, language, culture. They're getting exposed to so much through this literature that we couldn't even teach them. They just have to read it and enjoy it and just take it in. It's going to help increase student attitudes towards reading. It's going to give students a voice in what they are learning. They get to choose their materials. Granted, the teacher may give them a few books to choose from, but hopefully the teacher's going to give them a choice. We're going to talk about that a little later, because sometimes the teacher doesn't have to do choice, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. However, if they get choice, they tend to be more motivated to learn. It's going to help students gain independence so that they can learn from their peers. It's kind of like cooperative learning, which is really big right now. I know it is in my school district. Literature circles make students depend on their peers. In order for literature circles to work, they all have to work together. They all have to do their role in which they are a leader. They're going to have to work together, talk together. They're going to have to teach each other and use each other as resources in order to complete the task. It's going to allow students the opportunity to voice their opinion in a social setting. For most students, the majority of their school day is sitting at a desk and listening to the teacher in a teacher-directed learning. Literature circles, though, offer students the choice, the opportunity to voice their opinion. They get to work with others and talk to others. It could be inside of school or outside of school, but they are taking the floor. So what is the teacher doing during literature circles? What is his or her role? The teacher is there to facilitate learning. They're going to develop the groups so that students will have the opportunity to succeed. And by groups, I don't necessarily mean this student, this student, this student are in a group. You may say, I'm going to try to have groups of 4 or groups of 5, and these are the roles I'm going to use. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that a little later. They're going to provide a variety of books for student selection. It can be from a theme or an author. The teacher has that power, but as far as the actual book selection goes, it's best that the students get to select the books that they're going to read. The teacher must explain literature circles to their students before beginning, and they must explain their expectations of the literature circle. The teacher must also provide the student with all materials they will need to be successful in their literature circle. So now that we know what the teacher is supposed to do, let's talk about the students. And what are the students supposed to do? Well, overall, students are in groups in which they should support others in the group and encourage everyone to participate, to have the most meaningful literature circle possible. The students should challenge each other as well as be prepared to defend their positions. So maybe you disagree with one of your classmates. You need to say, I disagree, I had a different interpretation. Why do you feel the way you feel? Here's how I feel. So they need to be able to be prepared for that. In order to make all students accountable, each group member will be assigned a role. So this goes back to when I talked about the teacher's role, is to decide what roles they want to use. Here are some of the most common roles. They will come with many different names when you do your research. So you can either pick a name from another resource, or you can make your name the own. A lot of them have different names but mean the same thing. So here's some of the most common ones I've found through a variety of resources. The first role is discussion director. There's the literary luminary. There's the illustrator, the word wizard or vocabulary enricher, the connector, and the summarizer. I'm going to go into depth and tell you a little bit about what each of these roles are, because these are the most common roles. So the role of the discussion director is to be the leader of the group. So the student that is the discussion director is going to be in charge of leading the discussion and getting all group members involved. It is their job to make sure every group member participates in the discussion about the text. It is also their job to ask questions. In the beginning, as a first time doing a literature circle, I might give them some question starters. By the end, the discussion director should be able to create their own questions, and we would prefer high or open-ended questions, those higher order thinking. They don't have a yes or no answer. It really provides for discussion. That's what we're looking for from the discussion director. The literary luminary is the person that's going to select parts of the text that was special, a part that they think the group might want to hear again. So when thinking about what they're going to select, it needs to be something that's thought-provoking, humorous, controversial, poetic, confusing, unusual, important, interesting, not just a random sentence. It has to have meaning, and they need to be able to say why they chose the one that they did. After they've selected the part of the text to reread, they, as the literary luminary, can read it. They could ask others to read it aloud, or they could ask everyone to reread it again themselves, then have discussion. The role of summarizer is to provide a brief summary of the text. The summary must be written in the student's own words and demonstrate understanding of the text. That's what we're really looking for here, is that it's understanding the text. We also want to make sure it's written in the student's words because in my experience, I've noticed that summarizing is a skill that tends to be a little more difficult, so we want to be working on that skill and helping build it up. I found this really cool key for students. It was a roll card, had success criteria. It was super cool. It was on Pinterest. I took a piece of it to put on here as an example of things that kids should look for. And this is something you could find easily on Pinterest and even give the students. But the example was, have I included all the key information? How can I include all the important information? Is the summary from the right part of the book? What is the main idea of the book? What is the author's intention? Who are the main characters? What is the setting? When? Where? Why? What part do I like the most? Is my summary correctly sequenced? Have I used descriptive words? Can I improve the words I have used? When I found this, I loved it. There was also success criteria to go with it. In my references, you'll have to look it up and find it. It was awesome. It is something that if it fit the role that I wanted, I would print that out and give it to the kids. It's going to help them think about their role and what they need. The illustrator. This member is going to create an illustration or a story map or a graphic organizer that is related to the part of the text that they were to read. If they create an illustration, it could be a character from that part of the story, or a specific moment that happened, or even the setting. But they must be able to justify why it was a key part, why they chose that part to illustrate. If they choose to do a map, it needs to show where the events took place, when and where. A storyboard, or it could be a graphic organizer, should sequence the events of that part of the story. The next one I found on many different sites, and it came with lots of different names. So I put 3 of them up here. Some of them call it a word wizard, some call it a word detective. I even found it to be called vocabulary enricher. This is why I said earlier that you'll find different names, and you could even name it something of your own. While this one had many different names, the role stayed the same. So the role of this person is to select unfamiliar, challenging, enriching, unusual, or interesting words. So no, they can't just open the book and just put their finger down and say, oh, this is the word. They have to be able to say, well, I chose this because it was kind of unfamiliar. Or this is a challenging word. I'm not sure what it means. I found this word interesting. So then they're going to find the meaning of that word and then share and discuss with their group. The connector is finding connections between the reading that they were assigned and other authors, movies, other literature, or personal life experiences. So they need to think about text to text. What they've read and connect it to another book that they've read, or a movie they've seen, or a show they've watched. They need to think about text to self, what they've read, and connect it to maybe some life experiences they've had. And then there's the text to the world, the text that they've read, and then something that's occurring in the world. Some other roles that are not as popular are the clarifier. Their job is to clear up confusion. The predictor makes predictions for the next part. The recorder listens and takes notes over the discussion. The reporter is going to report about the discussion activity. And then you have the checker who just checks that all roles were completed and all tasks were done. So you might be thinking, well, how will I hold students accountable and evaluate their work? I have to put grades in. How am I going to get a grade out of this? Some ways to hold them accountable and most importantly evaluate their work. Ernest Bond really loves journaling. I think it's great to kind of let them choose their book and start journaling based on what they think that they're going to read, or their expectations for the book, or what they hope to learn, or